morning. Welcome to St. Paul's Universalist Church. It's very good to see everyone back. As I was remarking to Julie as we were setting up, I feel like I haven't been at this pulpit in about a year. COVID has a way of, you may have noticed, elongating time and sense of time. But it is good to see everyone and to be back at the start of another church year. In the way of announcements, I saw a couple on the back table. David would like to announce our meatloaf dinner donation sign-up sheet is in the back, on the back table. No hurry, just getting things rolling. It's November 7th. Daylight savings ends that day? Yeah. And Pat would like the congregation to know that the address for David and Donna Vaughn is incorrect in the newsletter that just came out. It should be 1246, not 12446. There's slips of paper in the back with the correct address, because Pat's on top of things. You do. You try and succeed. I try and stumble. But anyway. Are there any other announcements that anyone would like to share?
Yeah, I ran into Kathy named Kathy Christie last week, walking up Borough Street. And Nan said she's going to be 101 in 5 weeks, so that makes it 4 weeks now.
Oh,
You know?
4 weeks. Okay. With masks, I can't always tell, but there they are. Very good. Yeah, a lot of centenarians. I think that's it. Let's proceed to our call to worship.
Holy waters, holy waters, holy waters, holy waters, holy waters, bathe us in forgiveness. Holy waters, wake us to the heart. Holy waters, wash us in the mystery. Holy waters of ocean stream shine. Holy waters, make us new. Holy waters, make us whole. Holy waters, make us free. Holy waters, make us one.
And Mark's call to worship reminds us that it's also our water communion. Sorry, that was on the next slide here in front of me. As is our tradition, we open the church year with a water communion, and we have water up front here. I open our service with these words of Leslie Takahashi. We gather as many drops, each winding our own path down life's surfaces and ruts. Here we pool together as a single body, flowing together for a time. Together, we are a stream, at times even a river, for with our shared force, we can travel toward oceans of meaning and seas of connection. Another tradition is to open our service with the lighting of our chalice. And as I do that, I invite you to join me in the words. Never rely on fancy technology. We like this chalice, for all who are here and all who are not, for all who have ever walked through our doors, for those who may yet find a spiritual home, and for those we can't even yet imagine. For each of us and for us all, may this flame burn warm and bright.
Our opening hymn is in the gray hymnal, number 100. I've got Peace Like a River. We'll do verses 1, 2, and 3. Number 100, verses 1, 2, and 3.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with our God.
Shall we gather by the river?
I invite you now to join me in a time of prayerful meditation. These are the words of Betz Weinig. As we gather together this morning, may we learn to recognize and affirm the pieces of possibility, the bits of good we bring. May we encourage rather than control, love rather than possess, enable rather than envy, allowing our individual gifts to weave a patchwork of peace, the soft, deep blue of sensitivity and understanding, the red energy of creativity, the white heat of convictions, the risky, fragile green of new growth, the golden flashes of gratitude, the warm rose of love. Each of us is indispensable if we are to minister to a broken and wounded world. Together, in our gathered diversity, we form the whole. May it be so. Let us now share a moment of silence where we listen to the wisdom of our hearts and minds.
We're going to do 136. We're reversing those.
Oh, did we reverse them? I thought we reversed them.
Wait a minute, I reversed it.
Okay.
No, we did do it. I'm wrong. We're doing 107. Don't listen to the guy.
In the Teal Hymnal Supplement, 2007.
Don't listen to the guy.
First week is with students from both of us.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
There's a quote by the author Norman Cousins that has always stayed with me since I first encountered it. Even thinking it might be the epitaph on my tombstone, but we'll see. He said that death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies within us while we live. And I want to talk about grief this morning. And I confess that it's an odd choice for starting off the church year. But a while back, and while Mark and I were planning services this summer, it occurred to me that a lot of us are grieving in ways both large and small. This week saw the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Has it really been 20 years? We've also seen the many ways in which the COVID pandemic has negatively impacted and continues to negatively impact all of our lives. We tend to associate grief with death, but there are many forms of grief. And today I want to talk about, acknowledge, and hopefully offer some ways of coping with that underlying sense of grief we may be feeling in light of past and current events. Perhaps you're grieving the loss of community. Maybe it's because the pandemic has forced you to have to be so careful about where you go and how many people you surround yourself with. You're not as young as you used to be, and you feel cut off from social groups you once had. Maybe you can remember, as most of us can, a time before the internet, before social media, before cell phones, when people interacted much more than they do now in person. What a concept. Technology in some ways has allowed us to form larger communities than ever, but they're also not as personal, not as close, are they? Maybe you're grieving the friendships you once had that have ended for whatever reason. Losing touch, falling out, a passing away. It's amazing the people who come and go over the course of our lives. We are such social animals, and it hurts when those connections are no longer there. Perhaps you grieve the choices you've made or wish you had made. All of those what ifs and if onlys in our lives. The lost opportunities, the things that didn't turn out as we'd hoped. The regrets of all of those roads not taken. Perhaps you mourn the loss of who you used to be before life went one way or another. Before you were older, before you were wiser. When perhaps you were an optimist instead of a pessimist or a realist. You look in the mirror at a photograph and you find yourself missing the person you were. Yesterday, of course, was the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Nearly 3,000 lives gone and an estimated 25,000 more injured. We all remember where we were, what we were doing when it happened. Psychologists call this flashbulb memory. We reflect on the cascade of events in the so-called war on terror. The lives, the time, the resources, the tremendous efforts put forth by our men and women in uniform, as well as civilians. We look back over those past 2 decades, and especially through the lens of the recent withdrawal in Afghanistan, and we're forced to ponder, was it worth it? Were our efforts in vain? Did we win the war but lose the peace? And of course, the specter of COVID-19 and its variants continues to loom over us. No one sitting here, or for that matter, outside of these walls, has not had their lives impacted by it in some way, shape, or form. Over 650,000 dead in this country. Over 4.5 million worldwide. I don't know about you, but I grieve for a society where enough people listen to the rampant disinformation that we can't overcome this plague. And it's costing people their lives. We think about 9/11 and its aftermath and the current pandemic, and we mourn all who we have lost. But we've lost even more than that. We grieve the loss of security we felt before suffering attacks on our own soil, or the loss of security caused by a microorganism too small to even see, ravaging through the population. We grieve the sense of unity we felt immediately after 9/11, before our divisions came back and grew even bigger. We remember 9/11, but you probably remember those days afterward, right? The unity, the divisions that didn't matter. Didn't matter what your political party was or what your religion was, whether you were, any of those things. All those things that we quibble about didn't matter for a few days at least. We were unified, working together in common cause over our common tragedy. We grieve over feeling lost or unanchored by all that's going on around us, then and now. What a downer for the first Sunday, right? It can be so draining when we contemplate these things, so heavy when you pause and think about it. How do we respond to our collective grief? Buddhists teach us that life is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. And that's true of the good things, but it's also true of the bad things in life. Suffering will not go on forever. And we should cherish the many blessings in our lives. Treasure those, for they too will eventually pass. Think of a flower, a painting, a sunset, time spent with loved ones. A thing is not beautiful because it lasts. Indeed, maybe what makes it so special is that it doesn't last. When I think of loss, I'm often reminded of the words of Dr. Seuss. I used to tell my kids this when they would kind of get sad about going back to school, but it applies to so many things. Dr. Seuss said, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." For all of its ups and downs and uncertainty, it is a privilege to be alive. I'm often struck by the statistical improbability that countless generations over thousands of years came together so that I could be standing here, so that each of you could be here, so that each and every person walking the face of the earth could be here. Let me put it like this. You walk into a convenience store, you buy a lottery ticket for the Mega Millions. Your odds of winning that are just over 1 out of 302 million with an M. In contrast, the odds of all those generations of ancestors coming together over the ages for you to be standing here or sitting or wherever you are today, 1 in 400 trillion. In other words, the odds of us being here is next to zero. But here we are, walking miracles. That makes us unique and so very special, but because all of us are the result of that, we forget that we are special and that we are statistical miracles. To be here, to be able to experience life is an incredible privilege. Part of the cost of that privilege is dealing with loss. So if you are grieving over something large, something small, over 9/11, over COVID, over those we've lost in our lives, over the things we've lost, please know that your grief is a holy thing It is proof that our lives have been touched in profound ways. It is evidence of love, of connection, of joy, and of memory. It represents an opportunity for growth, even though sometimes that growth can be painful. In the words of the great theologian Friedrich Buchner, here is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid. Amen. We will now enter into our water communion with hymn number 136. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus of Ephesus is famous for one belief. He taught his students that change is certain. Because things always change, he declared, we can never step twice into the same stream. So too, our congregation today differs from the congregation that gathered water here last year and the year before that. And yet, last year is still in our collective memory, and the year before and the year before that. It is our tradition to mix in some water saved from our previous year's water communion, adding it to this year's gathered waters. There it is. That's not a miracle, that's ice. In that way, the past is carried on into the present. Our past is always with us. A portion of the water in this bowl was gathered in our first water ceremony. The waters that we add today will in turn connect us with the future. know with COVID and everything, you may not have brought water, but we have a pitcher here, and we have the microphone here. Just a helpful reminder, if you take part in the ceremony and would like to come up, pretend that's an ice cream cone and that you're talking into the part that you're going to lick. Just don't lick the microphone. But that's how it will pick up your voice for everyone else. So at this time, I invite anyone who wishes to do so to come forward and share their stories and their water from this past summer, from the time since we last met as a congregation.
I didn't go very far this year, but a little farther than last year. I got to Syracuse and Cooperstown. But every day I'm so thankful to live in such a beautiful place as Little Falls and in this whole area.
This is water from Yield Tavern in Vermont, thanks to a suggestion from Jeff and Dawn. Marty and I celebrated 65 years of marriage.
We didn't do our usual amount of traveling this year. However, we did get to the beach several times where we found out that Axel absolutely loves it. And he loves being with his family, so that makes it even better.
That represents water from Lake Champlain, where Mike and I joined Rachel, Sarah, Ryan, and Caden, and the dog Mo for an enjoyable week. At the beginning of August, we went swimming, boating, fishing, kayaking, walking, hiking. Even visited a winery. Lots of fun for that week. So I'm grateful for that experience. I was very sparing with that water because when I saw we were going to have this ceremony, I couldn't think of too many things to contribute. But in April, I went with two friends to Utah, Arizona, and visited several of the national parks. And I was very sparing with the water here because I hadn't been there in over 25 years. And when we went to the Hoover Dam and Page, Arizona, I was so struck by what the drought has done out west. The water levels are incredibly low. When we drove to Page, I said, let's go see Lake Powell. And when we got close, I'm like, where's the water? It's so deep in this valley that you can't see it from the parking lot. It's not like around here where we have water everywhere. It was really, really a beautiful trip, but kind of a shocking trip.
It's a symbolic gesture of all the tears that were, the water represents all the tears that were shed for all the 9/11 memorials I watched this past weekend. It brought back a lot, and the flashbacks for the people that were directly involved and the way they overcome things, and they just go on living it every day. It was just something else to watch. So the water represents all the tears that they shed for all the people that were lost.
It was an odd summer. Did you know, counterpoint to what Jane was saying, that we did not go 2 consecutive days in July without some form of precipitation? It's crazy. The imbalance between the coasts. We got up to Vermont, saw was it the birthplace of the Morgan horse, or where the line was? And it was raining like crazy. Ventured up to Burlington. We viewed Lake Champlain. We didn't go out on it, but back in my graduate school days, we went over there probably once a month. Hadn't been back in 28 years, but it's still there. Didn't see the lake monster. Let's see. I suppose, well, we didn't really cry any tears of joy, but we are thankful that our Miss Natalie, who had done 1 year of college from her bedroom because of COVID, started her sophomore year at SUNY Cobleskill in her dorm. We were taking even bets that we'd probably, after a couple days, get a phone call. I made a mistake, I can't live on campus, but she's taken to it like a fish to water. It's only week 2, and we have to think, are you coming home this weekend? Well, I might come home one night. So interesting. May our gathering together this morning be a blessing for one and all. May the memories we've shared, the stories we've shared, inspire us to a year of hope and love and of courageous faith. And may we walk that year in full awareness, as often as possible, of the blessed ties that bind each to all. Amen. Our closing song is number 121, We'll Build a Land. meal rice. It starts with a drop, and then a trickle. A burble, a rush of water, bubbling toward its destination. And finally, the wide, endless sea. All rivers run to the sea. Today you brought water, poured it into a common bowl. Though our experiences have differed, these waters mingle, signifying our common humanity. Today we came and shared in this sacred community. May you depart this sacred space, hearts filled with hope for new beginnings, a fresh start. Go forth but return to this community, where rivers of tears may be shed, where dry souls are watered, where your joy bubbles, where your life cup overflows, where deep in your spirit you have found in this place a home. All rivers run to the sea. Please join me in the words as we extinguish the chalice. The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world. Please join our benediction.